I just remember him saying words something like, if you need a best friend who will stick closer than a brother, or if you need a friend who will always be there for you, I want you to come over here and meet my friend Jesus. I was 9 or 10 years old. I would have been about 9. And at the time, the two thoughts that went through my head were not religious thoughts. They were pretty basic thoughts. They were, I have no friends and I have no brothers. So if there's a chance to have a friend and a brother in the same person who's going to be closer to me than anybody else, then that's what I'm looking for. I want that. The rest of the ramifications of that idea were way over my head. I wasn't even thinking about them. But I like the idea of having a friend and a brother. So I dropped my chewing gum and the pictures I was drawing, and I ran to the front and I knelt down and I prayed like everybody else at the front of the room did. Well, a couple of weeks went by, and in that time frame, I realized how much my stepfather hated that little church. And I don't know exactly what happened in the relationship he had with them. They were right down the alley from our house, literally a block. My sister and I would walk down the alley and go to that little church on a regular basis. And until the day that I said that I had done this thing with meeting Jesus and that I was going to go back and get baptized. And I think his words were similar to over my dead body. And I remember the friction that he had with them. There was a time that my sister had come home and they had given her a new pair of shoes. And it made him so mad, the pride wouldn't allow him to keep them, and so he sent them back. Well, the day that I got baptized, after the service, I walked to the front. Again, I'm still only 9 years old or so. I walk to the front and I step up on the little stage at the front of that church, and I literally pushed the pastor off the platform. And he stepped down on the ground and he turned around and looked at me, and we were now eyeball to eyeball. And I said, one of these days, Brother Byron O'Neill, I'm going to take your place. And he laughed at me like anybody would at a 9-year-old, going, yeah, I know exactly what I'm going to do with my life. And so nobody thought any more of it. And I'm sure the thought through his head was, yeah, and you'll be a rocket scientist and a firefighter and a cop and all of these other things long before that. And we really just kind of moved on past the moment and didn't think anything else about it. But I remember that sentiment of my stepfather, that kind of over my dead body. And it almost created a tension between me wanting to take the pastor's place and him wanting to keep me out of the church. I never understood exactly why. I just knew there was brakes put on that idea right away. If you fast forward a few years, that was when I was standing in the backyard singing at 3 a.m. and my mother told me to shut up. It was an evolution of time that I played football, and I was really, really good in the 7th and 8th grade and all the way up to my freshman year. And then my sophomore year, I had different coaches, and they told me, you're too fat and you're too slow and you'll never play. Which was funny because when I got to the Air Force, the day that I quit football, the day that I walked off the field and said, I'm not going back, I've got more important things to do with my life, I asked the coach, after I'd turned in my pads, after it was a complete decision, I said, do you think I even had a chance to make the team? And in the Air Force, the coach said, make the team? Are you kidding? I was looking for you as my starting fullback. Your size and your speed are an incredible combination. You would have been an incredible running back. But I'd already made up my mind and I gave up. So between music and preaching and science and firefighting and singing and football, there were a lot of times and a lot of people that I encountered whose notion of who I was and what I was capable of always seemed to drive me into the ground. Now, we've talked in previous chapters of Live a More Excellent Life. We talked about peg moments. We've talked about the words that other people speak to us and whether we validate those words. Can we allow them to be that important to our life? Are the people that are saying them, do they have the right motive? Are they saying those words because they are trying to build us up or keep us from danger? Or are they saying those words because they don't want to see us succeed because it would mean they're failures? And we've got to judge the consequences of those words. But we've also got to realize that when we were kids, we could take a bed sheet and become Superman. I remember living in Oklahoma. My grandparents lived on a big, what we would call a ditch. It was like a little river when the rains came. But it was probably 20 or 30 feet across and probably 15 feet or so deep. We used to take the fitted sheets, right off the clothesline. That probably didn't make Grandma very happy. But we'd take the fitted sheets off the clothesline and we'd grab those little corners where they were already cinched up, and we'd put all four corners together, and we would run and jump off the edge of this 15-foot ditch into the bottom of the ditch, trying to see if we could get enough air in that bed sheet to be a parachute. I remember building rocket ships out of refrigerator boxes. I remember thinking I could run faster than a car, that I could throw a baseball a mile, that I could jump off the house and not be injured. There were so many things that I could do as a kid that as we live, reality just seems to sap away our imagination. The scary thought is, when you think about things that have been invented, things that have been created, from computers to light switches, to various kinds of food, discovering things that we can eat and are healthy for us, that years ago we would have thought, oh no, that doesn't look like food, leave that alone. The imagination of human beings is magnificent. And yet we tend as a society, as a human population, to allow dreams and ideas and fanciful imaginations to only live in our children. And then we say harsh words like, grow up. Get reality into your mind. Understand that not everybody can do everything they want to do. You can't make a living as an artist. And all of those dreams, those imaginations begin to fade. We have to stamp them down. We have to control them. We have to put people in a job where they can make a living, because you can't raise a family on artwork. Writing poetry is never going to make you a millionaire. Singing songs in the backyard is never going to make you a millionaire. Remember, I grew up in the days when there was no America's Got Talent. One of the guys that I sang with on choir now still produces records. Ronnie Akins is producing stuff all the time. He lives in Tennessee, just outside of Nashville. He's been on, I believe it's America's Got Talent or Rising Star or one of those. Made it all the way to the show. One of the girls that I sang with in choir was in a worship band for years, and they had several great albums, but all the girls grew up and got married and didn't have time to travel anymore. Sierra was the name of that band. Jennifer Hendricks was a great friend of mine in high school, and I've seen her a couple of times since then. She's now married, and that's not part of her life, but she got to live that dream. How many of us have a dream like that, that was a childhood dream that we really honestly believed we could pull off? And then a dream thief came along and said, you can't make a living doing that. You're not good enough for that. No one wants to see you do that. No one cares about hearing you do that. You need to play along with reality. And all of a sudden, the dreams of our life begin to fade away. Now, if you've been following me through this entire video series for Live a More Excellent Life, what you know is that we started with realizing that people telling us how to live our life is a hard thing for us to cope with. And we've got to choose who has the right to dictate our life and who does not. That we have the right to choose the attitude that we're going to have and how we respond to other people. That we have to be responsible for the circumstances in our life, like the people who come along to rock our boat, and whether we're going to sink or we're going to swim or we're going to rise up and walk on the water and do something entirely different. You realize that we have challenged the status quo from day one in this book, in this video series. And I'm going to challenge you again. I want you to step back for a moment and ask yourself, what dreams have I had in my lifetime? Whether I was 3 or 13 or 23 or 33 or 43 or 53 or 63 or 73, what dreams have I laid down? Because they weren't consistent with everyone else's reality for me. That I didn't believe I could do them then. And so I've simply let them go, and I've never gone back to them. I've never thought twice about what I was truly capable of or not. How many of those dreams have broken your heart that as you look now, at this moment in your life, you can look back and go, if I had applied the same diligence to that dream that I've applied to my current career or educational goals, I could have done something. I could have really made it in that world. I could have really been successful. Now, none of us knows how the world is going to shape our eventual circumstances. But I truly believe in the phrase that if you love what you do, you'll never work another day in your life. Not because it's not hard work to succeed, but because you love it so much it doesn't feel like work. If you're doing what you're made to do, where you're in the sweet spot and everything comes easy to you. I love the way Caroline Leaf says it. She says, you'll know. Now, she's a neuroscientist that I follow quite a bit. Caroline Leaf says you'll know that you're operating in your greatest gift when you do something that to you seems so unbelievably easy, and everybody else looks at you and goes, how do you do that? Have you had a moment in your life when you were doing something that just made you all tickly on the inside? It lit up your passions. It made you want to laugh and cry and sing all at once. And when you did it with so much ease, but no one else could seem to do the same thing. You know you've seen someone do that. You see them accomplish something, and you look at them and you go, how do you do that? And they go, I thought everybody could do this. But the reality is, you've been given a special gift. You've been given an opportunity. You've been given a way of doing things that not everybody can do. And you need to live that dream. Even if it's just a sideline hobby, even if it's just an opportunity to do it one time, to get on the stage with America's Got Talent or The Voice, or to build your biggest wedding cake, or to build a ranch, to build a bookshelf. Whatever it is that you feel like you were made with and made for, that those talents are down deep inside of you. Don't let those dreams be snatched away from you. Now, there's some things here. I've got a nice little list that I want you to consider. This is a list of things that people, for lack of a better word, allow to be excuses. Some would call them reasons. Some would say, well, it's very realistic that I don't live out my dream because of. But these are 12 things that I think like to steal people's dreams. They're dream thieves. Now, there may be people in your life. There may be one person in your life who on a regular basis has mocked your dream or laughed at your ability or told you that you can't. There may be realistic limitations. I do not have the physique to be a ballerina. I'm also closer to 50 than 15. Now is not the time to learn to be a ballerina. If my dream was to be a ballerina, I should have started that a long time ago. It's going to be a little difficult now. Those things are realistic. But there are a lot of things in our life that we let stand between us and the dreams that we're made for, the dreams that we were called to live out, the dreams that could have changed the world. What if someone had told Steve Jobs, that whole idea of creating an iPod, that's just stupid. You need to go get a real job. Go back to college and get a real job. They wouldn't have rolled out the iPhone 7. So these are some of the things. These are the things. Number one is that person who comes along in your life and says you can't, you won't, you're not capable, you're not worthy, you're not able. Next might be fear of failure. How about a fear of success? How about negative words and comments? Friends' opinions? Education or a lack thereof? Permission or authority to dream? Limitations, whether they're real or not? Procrastination? Self-doubt? Fear of hard work, or fear of rejection. Remember, as kids, we could do anything. We could outrun a car, throw a baseball a mile, jump off the roof with nothing but a parachute made of bed sheets. And then we grow up a little bit, and all of a sudden reality sets in, and we feel like we can't do anything. So there's some questions at the end of the chapter that I really want you to consider. And before we do that, I want you to realize that you have the right to do whatever it is that you were made to do. You have the right to live the dream. You have the right to live that dream more than any dream thief has to steal it from you. You have the right to go back to school and get your degree to be a doctor. You have the right to sell your house and move into an RV. You have the right to do those things. That doesn't mean you don't have other responsibilities. Take care of your responsibilities. You know that's been a theme of Live a More Excellent Life as well, that you've got to be responsible for your life. No one else is. You've got to make the tough choices. You've got to pay the price. You've got to be willing to say, I'm not going to be able to watch The Voice on Monday and Tuesday nights because that's when I go to class to get my degree so I can move into the next level of my dream. You've got to be willing to say, I'm going to give up that extra bag of donuts or that extra cup of coffee or that extra whatever it is that I'm spending my money on in order to live out my dreams. You're going to have to make sacrifices because nothing in this life worth having comes free. You're going to have to pay a price. It may be a sacrifice of time. It may be a sacrifice of certain relationships. It may be a sacrifice of money. It may be a sacrifice of your will. You may just simply have to surrender your ideas and your notions for a minute and say, This is what I want more than I want to be comfortable. This is what I want more than I want to have 6 hours of rest on Sunday. This is more than I want. This is what I want more than I want to have that relationship, that friend that I've known, and we played golf and smoked cigarettes together for 25 years. Sometimes you've got to change things in your life before your life will change. So here are my questions for you. Actually, most of these are statements. There are a couple of questions. The first instruction is, I want you to get out a piece of paper, and realizing that you have the right to dream more than anyone has the right to steal your dreams, I want you to make a list of every childhood dream you ever had. Every one of them, with every detail you can remember. I remember my sister and I thinking one day after my stepdad had been very abusive that night, we were walking to school, and as we walked through the puddles, I remember her looking at me and she said, "Do you think your ears are big enough to fly like Dumbo? If I strapped my chest of drawers on your back and we took all of our clothes with us, do you think we could get away?" Now, obviously that was a strange idea. My ears are big, they're not big enough to fly with. But the idea that we wanted to find a way to get away was a significant notion. I want you to write down all of those dreams. I want you to ask about the things that motivated you to dream them, and ask about the reasons that you never did live those out. Maybe some of those dreams are still possible. Maybe some of those dreams were silly and unrealistic and unfair even when you dreamed them, but no one had a conversation with you about them. So next, after you've written down all the details that you can recall, I want you to have a conversation. You know, remember way back early in the chapter, early videos, we talked about lettuce. Remember, Wilson is too expensive. The volleyball, $15 a piece. You destroy one of those, you're going to spend a lot of money getting another one. But a head of lettuce is about $1. So get you a head of lettuce, have a conversation with him. When you're done, when you've taken out all your frustrations on your head of lettuce and not your friends, taken out all your frustration on your head of lettuce and not your family, not your kids, not your students, not your co-workers, take out all that frustration on that head of lettuce and then come up with some nice vinaigrette balsamic strawberry dressing. Maybe some walnuts. And lettuce will serve many, many purposes. But today I want you to take lettuce, and I want you to have a nice conversation with lettuce about all those dreams. Why? Because if you're talking to a head of lettuce, at least people won't think you're crazy for talking to yourself. Which dreams have you actually accomplished? You know, some people can look back on their life and go, you know, I had 3 or 4 big dreams in my life, and I've made it to 2 of them. 2 of them have actually come true. The other 2 I kind of let go of, I abandoned, or I forgot all about. Now's a good time to go back and pick those up and ask yourself, is there a real reason that I'm not living that part of my dream? There was something in you, something wired in you, the gifts and the talents that caused that dream to happen in the first place. And if you have let go of that dream, you have let go of part of who you are. You have not developed fully who you were made to be. And I want to challenge you to ask that question. Are some of those dreams accomplished and some of them forgotten? Have I swept them under the carpet because they didn't seem as important? Or am I still believing the lie that I'm not worthy, I'm not capable, I'm not able? Which dreams are still possible at this point? Like I said, it's a little hard for me, closer to 50 than 15, to go back and be a ballerina. It would be a little hard for me to go back and join football and try to be in the NFL. A little long in the tooth for that. But there are some dreams that are still possible. Some things that could still happen. What are those dreams for you that today, that if you started today, you could still pull it off? And what can you do right now, within the next 24 hours, to make those dreams a reality? What could you do right now? I started this book in August of 2010. I've been writing poetry and short stories and children's stories since I was 17 years old. That was a dream that I let go of. The idea of speaking and writing and touching people's lives. I remember sitting in the counselor's office when I got out of the Air Force, and she said to me, "What do you want to do with your life?" And I said, "I want to be a writer. I want to be like James Dobson. I want to travel around the country, and I want to speak to families about how to get their family strong. And I want to write books and touch people all over the world." And she looked at me and she said, "Well, have you written anything?" And so I gave her one piece that I'd written, and she read it. And she got up and walked out of the office. And it seemed like she was gone probably 10 minutes. When she came back, she sat down across from me and she said, "Where did you get this?" I said, I wrote it. She said, well, I understand you like put it on the paper, but are these like the thoughts of this James Dobson guy? Because I don't even know who he is, but I don't know where you get ideas like this. And I said, well, I wrote them. I thought about it, I prayed about it, and that's what came out. And she said, well, that's kind of a problem. And I said, what do you mean? I said, all I want to know from you is, do I take this passion and go to school for journalism? And she said, oh no, journalism is not going to accept you. Okay? Do I take this passion and go to school for English and become a better writer? She said, I have to be honest, at 22 years old, you've got a pretty good grasp on the English language. You're probably one of the more articulate 22-year-olds and most thoughtful 22-year-olds I've ever met. I said, okay, great. Well, then how do I get what I've written to the world? She said, that's where the problem comes in. She said, first off, for me to believe that you wrote that is a hard thing for me to swallow. Because I don't know any 22-year-old man who understands the concept of what you wrote about there. Not a 22-year-old, not a man. I mean, the circumstances necessary to understand what's in that piece are way beyond your years. And I said, okay, so what do I do with it? What do I go to school for? I've got $20,000 of GI Bill to pay for a college education. What do I go to school for? She said, Tom, I can't tell you the answer to that question. I don't have any idea. I said, well, when will people respect my writing? What do I need to have behind it? Is it a degree in psychology? She said, you're not going to make it in psychology. No one will agree with your ideas. I said, what about journalism? No, nobody's going to accept your ideas. I said, well, then what do I do? She said, look, I think you just have to grow old. When your hair starts turning gray or turning loose, when you have a PhD, maybe. She said, I look at this piece and I think maybe a pastor or a doctor or a psychologist has written this. Maybe when you're old, people will respect what you have to say because you are way ahead of your time. And I walked out that door that day and I never went back to college. And within a couple of months, I pretty much stopped writing. It was almost 15 years into my marriage before I would ever pick up a pen and write anything significant. I think in the time period between that counseling session and the 15 years of my marriage, I probably wrote less than 20 pages total. But in August of 2010, I felt challenged to start a book. And the title of this book came in the same vision that developed it. Now, I've mentioned to you before the Insuperable Vision Workshop, those 2 audio CDs. That tells the vision that caused this book. And it helps you to understand how you can apply that same thing. If you let go of your dreams, you will not have a vision. I'm sorry, it's just true. And if you don't have a vision, there's no place for your dreams to be lived out. They go together. The vision for your future and the dreams of your childhood are one and the same. They're just different expressions. They are the imagination living inside of you that's begging to come out. It's every gift, it's every talent, it's every opportunity you've ever been given, all in one place, begging for an expression. And if you allow those dreams to die because someone stole them or told you were unable or incapable or unworthy, then you're going to crush the imagination that created you. I challenge you to go back and look at those things that you've laid down, like 15 years of writing, and ask yourself, what would be different today if I had been diligent at that? What would be different if I'd stayed at it and not let go? What difference could I make in the world? What difference would I be if I truly applied myself to those things? And then I want you to get busy about the business of looking at every one of those dreams in the finest detail and asking yourself, if there are some that have already passed by, which ones could I do in the next 24 hours? What could I make a move toward? If it's writing a book, take an hour when you get off work today, isolate yourself and start writing something. What could you do in the next 24 hours to begin living the dream that you abandoned so many years ago? That's my challenge for you today. I am J Loren Norris, and you've been watching Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.